So here we are, sharing secrets of the soil with me, your host, Regenerative.
G'day, soil lovers. It's Till and Ray and the Regen Hour. In this talk, we're going to be talking about the 7 principles of soil health and what we can actually do on farm or even in your own veggie garden to improve soil health.
Excellent.
Yes.
And as you might notice, if you're following along for the video, we're wearing the same clothes. Why is that?
Yes, yeah, because it's on the same day.
We are batch creating content, which is what everyone should be doing.
Yep, very efficient. Very good. Well, we'll start with our first principle. So the first principle is context. So it's important to understand the context that your farm or veggie garden or whatever growing system is in. And so we're talking things like climate. Climate's a very important driver of temperature and rain. And so when we're in a northern climate, which is dominated by, or at least in Australia, the northern climates are summer-dominated rainfall regions. That's going to affect what cover crops we plant, how we're going to manage our farm so that we can have enough water for our winter crops, all that. And then when we're in our winter climates, winter-dominated rainfall areas, how we're going to manage our water there. A lot of this is determined by, well, at least I feel, water and how we're managing our water across our farm. It's also important to know our own context. So if you want to work harder or, not as hard, it's important to know how much energy do you have to contribute towards this. So if you're really gung-ho on this, there might be more, tools that we can use that you'll probably get better returns from it. Like you'll see a bigger impact, but it's going to be, there's going to be more work to do. And also finance. So there's also finance context that we also have to consider. How much do you want to contribute towards these things? Ray, do you have any points on context?
Yeah, I think it's really important to have like self-awareness, like knowing like what you said, the area that we're in, but also like what are the goals that you're trying to achieve? Are you building up a business for, the cash flow? Are you building up the business or the farming enterprise to give to family? Are you selling the asset? And so I think that falls into context because the way that you may do things on your farm, what is that gold nugget that you're looking for in order to hit your goals, because like some people, from what I understand, is like they discover like no tilling and they go, okay, we've got to sell the tiller. And it's like, no, like you might still need to till and plow and open up the soil. Like you can't just learn that principle and then go cold turkey on it. So knowing what your plan is, and what you said, do you have the finances to make that transition? Are you going to move faster? Or are you going to move slower? Is this a 12-month goal or a 10-year goal? Is it something you want to succession to your kids? And are they going to take on the regenerative kind of journey? The only thing I want to touch on is like, why would someone need these principles? Like before you jump straight into it, which is awesome because you're a goer and doer, but why would people kind of need to lean on some of these principles in the first place? Like who is this kind of list for?
Yeah. So I guess it's first important to note that we're looking at principles rather than, do this, do that. And the reason why we're looking at principles rather than practices is because the complexity of these biological systems that we're working in, so like on farms, it's so complex that you just can't say do this and that and you'll restore your soils. It really depends on your context. It really depends on your context and the tools that you're going to apply. But in terms of why we actually want to contribute to soil health, we get so many benefits from increased soil functionality. So when you think about our soil and the functions that it contributes to our farm, effectively everything comes from our soils, unless you're a hydroponic system. But everything comes from our soil. We get it holds our water. And so when we look at that, we want to increase our water holding capacity, our water infiltration rates, because that's going to increase the amount of water we have and so basically crop yields. There's so much functionality that we get from soils, which all relates to increased productivity and or reduced inputs.
Yeah, love it. So number one, context.
Yep, know context so you know what tools to apply.
Yep, awesome.
Next. So the next one is we want to reduce the amount of disturbance we're applying to our soil. So minimal disturbance. So disturbance is really anything that negatively impacts our soil. So this could be plowing. It could be uncontrolled traffic. So if you're driving everywhere across across the paddock, that's going to be disturbing soil structure, just everything in the soil. Disturbance can also be long fallow periods, so when nothing grows over summer and winter. Really, yeah, anything that disturbs our soil. And the reason why we don't want to disturb our soil is that we get effectively, when we think of how soil formed in the past, there wasn't any plows running over it. Livestock or animals may have gone through the area for a short amount of time and then would have been off the land for a bit. So soils and the microbes in our soils have adapted and grown in basically an environment that doesn't get disturbed. So it's always covered. It's never broken up. And so what happens when we do disturb our soil is we get all these negative impacts. So we get compaction, which really reduces the ability for our roots to explore into the soil profile. There's also a problem with infiltration. We get a bit of compaction. There's also a lot of erosion that happens. If we plow up a paddock, we're going to get erosion, oxidization of soil organic matter. So there's all these kind of impacts that we do when we disturb our soil. It's not meant to be disturbed. It's supposed to stay intact and protect it.
So one of the big things with the whole plow was to aerate the soil. So how does the soil get aerated if we're not plowed?
Yeah. So
because I think that's the myth. Like people think they need, and don't get me wrong, I think plowing, like I know so many people who have gone down the regenerative journey or focus into soil health, and years 1 to 2, they are definitely plowing. They're assisting the soil to get aerated until the critters come back and, the soil goes back to being a bit more of a sponge with air and so forth. Because I think that's one of the things that people miss, that in soil there needs to be a high level of
gas exchange.
Yeah, and air, the breathability of it.
Yeah, so it doesn't plowing affects the aeration of our soil. So typically what happens is you want to plow so you can make a really nice seed bed. So if it's all lumpy and whatnot, that might not, it's not very good to plant into.
Yeah.
So typically you'd plow something up. It'd make all the soil particles uniform across the paddock. You'd also get rid of weeds. And that's the two biggest.
Yeah, right.
But what happens is after a short amount of time, that all collapses on itself because there's no structure. So basically tillage destroys our soil structure. And so when we have no structure, there's nothing to hold the soil up. So it almost collapses itself. And yes, tillage is very good at breaking up compaction, but the compaction is only there because we've been plowing for a long time. Although in Australia, a lot of farmers are no-till. So I think like 90 to 95% Australian farmers are no-till. And so it's been a big push in the last 10, 20 years to go no-till. So a lot of farmers in Australia are no-till, but fallow is still a big thing. Long fallows, especially in northern areas. But effectively, not disturbing soil allows for structure to rebuild with microbes. And so microbes and plants are the main drivers of building soil structure. And so when we have nice soil structure, we're going to get nice gas exchange, water infiltration. So that's really the main reasons why we want to minimize our soil disturbance, is so that we can keep nice soil aggregates, structure within our soil.
I think also the thing that you made clear there was disturbance isn't just plowing it or tilling it. It is even driving over it and having, tractors moving things all over the paddocks. All that is kind of disturbing the soil, not in a let's turn it up way, but let's compact it down.
Yeah. And I mean, there's nothing you can do about not, if you've got to harvest, you're going to drive the header over
until we get drone harvesters.
Yeah, true. But there's, you can do controlled traffic, which is you use a GPS basically to control exactly where your wheels are going every time.
Yeah, wow.
So nowadays we have that. In the past, I've done a bit of plowing on our farm a few years ago, and you look back at where you've driven, and it's just this squiggly line. Not the best.
I've done it with a slasher, and I agree. It is so hard getting. You think it would be so easy just to follow the line.
You pick a tree in the distance.
Yeah.
No.
I've always tried to play around with that. I'm like, there has to be a better way. Like, do I do figure eights? Do I do circles? Like, I feel like going up and down a paddock to me in my mind, because you always get to that last part. It's like you don't have the turning circle anymore to like get that last bit. And I'm like, there has to be a way where I can get that last bit before I need to get the last bit. And I know like on farms now it's all precision GPS, mapped and so forth. So the tractor is, basically told where to go, and every millimeter of soil is tracked and measured. But when I was doing it on a tractor, I know I have had that feeling as well of like, God, I can't get this last bit, and I'm going around in circles and circles. And I thought there has to be a better way. There has to be like a pattern. I think people have discovered that pattern. I just never knew it.
Yeah, and as you said, we've got GPS. So compaction from driving your tractor over it too many times, probably not the biggest contributing factor to soil degradation, at least with controlled traffic.
Yeah, I think it's just being mindful of it and knowing.
Oh yeah,
that minimal disturbance means both ends of that spectrum. But do you think putting chemicals like inputs onto a soil is disturbing it, or are you talking about more the physical disturbance?
Probably more physical disturbance.
Okay.
I mean, applying Roundup and herbicides, there's evidence to suggest that has an oxidizing effect on the soil environment, which that might destroy soil organic matter, which might contribute to a reduction in soil aggregation and structure. But I think the biggest things that would affect it is like plowing it up, fallow, driving over your paddocks. So moving to basically no-till and controlled traffic is a massive one.
Excellent. And one word that you've thrown around a couple of times in that is oxidization. For those listeners who don't know, because it took me a little while to get my head around that as well. But how do you explain oxidation?
So I like to explain oxidation as, imagine burning something just without a flame. And so typically what happens in the chemistry of it, oxygen reacts with your compounds. So think of like when you eat an apple core and you leave the apple core out for a while and it oxidizes and it goes brown, whatnot. That's oxidation. Yep. So the same thing can happen to our soil. Carbon, it oxidizes and it reacts with oxygen. And then my understanding is that it releases carbon dioxide. So it reacts. Does that. So that's what I meant by oxidation. Is a little bit more when you get into the exchange of electrons, but we can keep that for
that's okay.
time.
But I just wanted to give that. And I guess like in the holistic management world, they talk about like when you cut grass and it falls over and it goes from tan color to that gray color, like that is the grass kind of oxidizing. All minerals are leaving, and if you need a visual representation, it's kind of like, you have a diagram and all the arrows are pointing up and it's kind of like steam leaving. I like your analogy of like, it's kind of burning without a flame. Just leaving something on a surface, it's oxidizing all the time, exposed to oxygen and having that chemical reaction where it's either rotting or changing color or, start this. Is it the start of the decomposition process or not really? Or it's a part of it?
It's a part of it. Yeah. I think it's just one of many. Yeah. But also the more you get into it, like everything's driven by redox reactions, which is oxidation versus reduction reactions, and it gets very complicated very quickly.
Yeah. But on that note, just to think that I think the point I wanted to get across to people that are listening is that, there's things leaving the soil all the time, so by tilling it and all that, you are creating more surface area for that oxidation to happen.
Yeah. Good point. Very good point. And in terms of livestock production, the way soil disturbance typically happens is overgrazing. So if you leave your livestock in the paddock for too long and they graze your pastures right down to the soil, that will be disturbing our soil effectively during that. So it's going to create more bare areas, and we're going to get UV light hitting our soil, which is going to cause oxidation and problems with that. Also, you get a compaction issue. You can livestock on for too long.
I see a common thread here. What's number 3?
Number 3 is we've got to protect our soil surface. So creating a cover. So principle 3, creating that cover to protect our soil. It's almost like armor that protects our soil. And there's a few reasons why we want to do this. First of all, when we look at nature, you say soil is barely, it's never really bare.
Yeah.
And so there's always litter, there's plants growing over it.
I always say, look at a rainforest. When you go walking in nature, you got to like try and see the path. Like you can't go off the path because there is just no other path.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, bare ground is what we define as a path. But in nature, it's very hard to find paths, you know.
So the microbes in, I guess, our soil have evolved to almost be covered the whole time. And so with this, we get better infiltration rates when we have litter. So litter is plant matter that's not attached to plants anymore. So it's been broken off and it's laying there as litter. So leaf matter, stems, even manure, that's all litter. And so when we get litter, we reduce the damage that the sun does to our soils. So it's almost like sunscreen on or wearing a shirt. You know, it's not, the sun won't be hitting our soil and oxidizing that and damaging it. And so I think the stats like when you move from a completely bare soil to a soil that's has 100% litter, like cover, not oxidation, evaporation reduces by 50 to 70%.
Wow.
So you get, it's a big decrease in evaporation. And so we protect our water that we store in our soil. It's also an improvement to infiltration. We're going to reduce the erosion from water impact. So when it rains and storming, and we get water hitting our bare ground, that's going to dislodge our soil particles. It's going to cause that the soil particles to basically pop away. And you also get sealing, capping, which is no good. It's going to reduce our ability to hold or store, infiltrate water into our soil. Microbes, also having some kind of litter on our soil gives our microbes something to eat. So it allows for that matter to be cycled back through our soil. It gives microbes something to do.
Yeah, I think we went through, well, I think a lot of farming systems is you take away, you cut everything down, you take it away, and there's nothing there to bring those minerals back into the ground. I remember my grandfather when he was doing stuff in his garden, you take all the beans, but then you drop all the bean litter to the ground and you dig it back into the soil. The idea now that I see is that like a plant will take certain minerals out of the soil to grow, but then they're still in that plant. And then if you let that rot or decompose on that spot, it's kind of closer to that cycle. And I know not all things can be done like that. Like, when you harvest, you have to take the plant out and you're growing it for that purpose. But I think a lot of people now with ground cover is understanding that green manure, I think sometimes people call it as well, when you just
stubble retention.
That's
typically what it's called.
And what is it? Stubble retention.
Yeah. So typically what would happen back in the day, or even still now, you'd harvest your wheat, your grain comes off, and then you would harvest the stubble for straw, effectively. Okay. But now it's better to keep that stubble on the field because it's going to protect our soil. It's going to create litter.
Yep.
And then if you don't have that litter, you can then plant a cover crop to create litter, basically. Yeah,
awesome. It's quite interesting, the word litter, because I feel like in the commons, the word litter is a negative thing. Like it's bad to litter, because it's kind of seen as like throwing rubbish out on the street. But in this context, you want litter, litter is good. So it's funny how like sometimes words can lose their, meanings. And, if you said to someone like, I've got litter on my paddocks, they probably think that you've just had people come and throw rubbish
stuff on it.
So
no, it's
that's context. Knowing your context, which room are you talking to, and do they understand the words you're throwing around?
Yeah. So covering the soil surface, that basically protects our soil from anything, any natural forces like that. So
I like the sunscreen analogy as well. And like Matthew Evans has a book called Soil, and he calls the Earth's crust like the Earth's skin. And so I think like having that analogy of like if our soils are the skin, you want to put the sunscreen on there to protect it, and cover crops and litter, and having ground cover is that kind of sunscreen. We do it to ourselves, but then we don't do it to our soils.
Yeah, and typically like these principles are typically the way you want to approach your system. So think if you've got a completely degraded piece of farmland, or you haven't started implementing regenerative principles, you can work down this list, and it's basically designed to you work down the list and you hit one at a time. So context, you got to context first, and then you're going to stop the things that are damaging your soil, and then you're going to do the things that protect your soil, and then we can look at improving soil.
Mm.
So with improving our soil, we can look at our fourth principle, which is adding.
Nice segue, by the way.
Perfect, mate. Diversity, so biodiversity to our system, and really with that we're looking at adding additional functionality. So whenever you think of like diversity, you're thinking of additional functionality, and that's really the benefit we're going to get. So we're looking at diversity in our plants that we grow. So that can be cover crops, it can be crop rotation, which has heaps of different benefits for disease, like reducing disease, accessing different nutrient profiles, as well as our microbial communities. We want to increase the diversity of those, because that's also going to contribute to more functionality. So that's all about functionality. And we will look at nature too. It's highly diverse. And with that, you get all these different functions that different plants and microbes.
I love it. And one thing that I like talking about when we talk about diversity is diversity of humans as well. Having different people come onto your farm, share their wisdom, whether it be First Nation, whether it be like other farmers from different systems. I think it's really important to know, the biodiversity of the human spirit, different mindsets, different values, helping you solve that problem together. I think that's why farming as a team or a family always feels a little bit more cohesive and structured to some degree. But I think, diversity has been lost because we do live in this world of monoculture. And I think even in the cities and all that, like the streets all look the same trees planted down the streets because it looks good.
Yeah, it looks uniform.
It looks uniform. We grow, even, these massive tree planting projects, they grow the same species in rows that looks completely unnatural to nature. And, a lot of these tree planting projects, a lot of people don't know that they've got long-term, yielding rights on it as well. So they plant these trees, it sequesters the carbon, but then it gets cut down or thinned out and turned into wood and other things. But when you look at any of those systems where it's just like one tree in one line, for me and my view on the world these days, it looks so unnatural. It feels broken, and that's why I always say to people, like, think about when you go for that bushwalk in nature, like there is not the same plant in one row, and it's like plants are growing on top of each other, and there's like the moss and lichen, and then there's like lower story and mid story, and then
annuals, perennials, cool season grasses, legumes, and
they're not competing, they're thriving together. And maybe one species out competes the other, but they're working in some kind of harmony or symbiosis.
Well, that's the thing, symbiotic relationships within the farming system. So like you'll find that when you have different plants, you produce more than if you just had the same amount of the same plant.
Interesting.
And so that really just has to do with that functionality. Like if different plants need different things, they can grow at the same time. And so one example of this is C3s and C4s. So a C4 is a different type of photosynthetic pathway. So it works better in warm seasons, whereas a C3 is better in cool seasons. So if you have those growing together, typically you have your C3s growing in cool seasons, growing over winter. And so you get a really nice production of your C3s growing in winter, and C4s growing in summer. But then you can extend the life of your C3, cool season, into summer because the C4 protects the C3. So there's all kinds of things like that where you're going to increase production more so than if you just had almost like a monoculture.
Yeah.
And monocultures are easier to manage for sure. I mean, you don't have that complexity, but within that complexity, you get benefits you need to manage.
Yes. And I think I agree with that, to say that they're easy to manage till the point that the fertility of the soil depletes and then you have no land to easily manage.
Yeah, but I guess the easy part to manage is you just then apply stuff. Like that's the.
But even that, I feel like we're starting to get to the end of the runway of that
equation
as well. But also, people don't have the money anymore.
Oh, true. Okay,
you know what I mean? Like, are we going to walk down this pathway where only the uber rich enterprises are able to still grow food because they've got the deeper pockets, which happen to be the ones that are all owned by commercial and sometimes overseas, bodies. So I think, but I think the point I was trying to make there is that we sometimes think that it's easy to run a tractor down straight lines, but doing that tractor straight lines thing has got a bit of a lifetime cycle. I think we're getting to that point now. And I get very excited about the tech in the farming space. And from some of the things I've seen over the last few weeks, events and all that, like, we talk about precision agriculture where maybe there is a world in the future where a drone picks the apple at the right time at 3 a.m. in the morning, and there is no human intervention involved at all. But we know that that apple has been picked at the right time, and whether they're grown in straight lines or a food forest in the jungle, it's still able to get picked because of potential precision technology in the future. So I think, we've created these straight lines because it works for the human mind.
Yeah, but typically isn't what works in nature.
Yeah.
But even with the precision ag thing, I think that'd be like pretty big. And even like reducing our chemical inputs. You got one product called Weed It, and so they put sensors on the spray booms, spray unit, and it senses when you have a green plant growing. And so if you're in fallow, you have any green plants, they're going to be sucking water. So if you go along and you got this Weed It technology, spot spray the weed, and so you're not applying a blanket of Roundup to your paddock, you just spot spray. So you can reduce like your herbicide input 90%.
Yeah, and even like boom sprayers and all that, like farmers are spraying the same mix. Maybe one half of the paddock needs more of A, and then the other half of the product needs more of B. So they mix A and B together and spray it across the whole thing. But from some of the things that I'm seeing, you're able to in the future run booms across the paddocks, and based on soil profiling and satellite imagery, and we're getting to the point now where from satellite images and data inputs, we can get down to like 5 meter squares at the moment, possibly even 3 meter squares. So the boom could be literally going over your paddock and spraying different ratios of chemicals based on the satellite data and all the input data that the machine is getting fed. So you literally put in the right amount of whatever it is at the right 3 square meter block of.
We've actually done that in class. I've modeled some of these. You make management zones based on characteristics.
Yeah.
So you can get these maps and you get all these different characteristics and properties, and you can model potential yield and stuff, and then spray accordingly. Like add your fertilizer.
And I speak to people and I think, that's too far in the future. And here you are saying that it's happening in your uni assignments.
We actually did it. That was the assessment.
There you go. Do you know what I mean? So this is like, if there are farmers out there listening thinking, that's in the future that I won't be in, I think you have to do a bit of a, check with yourself to go that I think we are very close to, because I've been to, several conferences over the last couple of weeks, and everyone is talking about this, like, chemicals are bad, but, in some world, but they're like, no, but they're bad because we mass throw it on everything, and soil is receiving stuff that doesn't need to be
in context.
Wrong context. But if we know that this square meter of land needs, this many parts of that and that many parts of that, and the machine is mixing, the way they explained it is like a printer. Like we were eventually going to be able to like run machinery over land that just the same way as a printer puts the right colored ink at the right spot to make the right color. That's to the level of detail we're going to be able to.
You can do that now.
Yeah, there you go. Do you know what I mean? Just need to take.
And all the contractors and stuff will have it too. So you upload a raster file, it's like just map file.
Raster,
and does it.
It's
pretty good.
So it's not out of the world, it's not woo-woo tech stuff. It's all happening. And I think that analogy of the printer is a really good way, because people know. I was very fascinated when printers first go, how the hell does it throw out of 4 colors a line that's so specific and hits the paper at the right time? And if we can do that for printers, we can definitely do that for farming. And I think that's an exciting world, because maybe the chemicals that we use are getting demonized, but it's because they're a one size fits all. It's like the whole paddock needs to be sprayed with this mix of that, because that's what the agronomy report said. But when we go to that nth degree, maybe that square patch does need glyphosate, but it's in a small zone. It's controlled. There's no rain off. There's no other wildlife being affected by it. So I think that is very exciting for me.
Good tangent.
Maybe we should do an episode purely on like the technologies that are coming, because then drones. Like I saw another photo the other day of this drone technology. It was like literally just flying around.
The seeding one?
I've seen the air seeder, and I've seen the spray.
Yeah,
the spray one as well. So you can like literally go out and spray. It can be working around the clock. Well, that's not true. Well, apparently, you need a human supervisor. You've got to hit the kill switch at the moment. They're not fully autonomous. But in America, all drone technology. In America, they've got like farms that are now being like managed by drones, and they'll have like 20 drones in the air at one given point with one supervisor.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Actually, they're using that with national parks.
Right.
So to get to like Blackberry or like that's one
Yeah,
way that's
right.
pretty. I'll just send a drone in, and it's a lot easier to get up these like mountains and stuff with a drone than to send a full ranger up there or something.
Unless you're keen for bushwalking. But I agree, and like reduces risk. No OH&S, precision. While you're up there, you're taking other data points using the drone technology, and what do they call lidar?
I'm not sure. I think it's a lot.
Lidar. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
What's
the next one?
Yeah. Or actually, we'll go back to diversity.
Oh, sorry.
So with diversity, we're going to basically reduce our disease as well. So when you're moving from wheat to canola to chickpeas to whatever, you're going to basically have this break in disease cycle. And so, you reduce the amount of disease you're going to get in your soil. And that's all because we're adding this additional diversity to our soil. There's also a principle called quorum sensing, which is when you have a bunch of different plant families growing at the same time. And what happens is that these different plants are giving off different chemical signals. So they, in their root exudates, actually in a plant's root exudates, there's different compounds depending on the family of plant. So, a warm season pasture or plant is going to give off a different chemical trace to lucerne, which is legume, or plantain, which is fall. Like it's all going to be different. And so what happens is when we have this amount of diversity in our root exudates, our microbes can sense that, and they go like, "This is great. There's all this diversity," and it activates a gene in their genome that causes them to go like super active.
Wow!
And so it triggers different gene expressions just because we've got more diversity in our plants. Yeah, which is pretty cool.
So does that mean that the plants are all talking to each other through some kind of sensory system?
Oh yeah, wow. Yeah. I think we all listened to a podcast once on a drive back to a farm from a farm, and the podcast was talking about how a fungal network can determine where different nutrients go, and so a fungal network can determine, I'm going to take nutrients away from this tree, I'm going to give it to this other tree because I think the climate's going to get warmer, this tree's going to get better, I'm going to send nutrients to this other tree. So everything's talking below our feet, all the plants and microbes, and they're all connected to their roots and fungal networks. It's a very complicated system that we only know 1%.
And that's why I think linking to the other one of disturbance, we are breaking those systems down when we're constantly disturbing the soil. You used to kind of say tilling and not appreciating that connectivity of all the plants is like going through, let's say, Optus servers and cutting all the wires and bringing the network down, which happened recently, which is why I picked that example. But it is, systems come down and people just can't function because like nothing works. Like trains in Melbourne stopped working, all because of the network going down. We like panic and things start shutting down. But that's kind of what we're doing under the ground. We're breaking a mycelium network, or we're causing it not to thrive. And so all the trees are panicking because they're like, oh, the train systems are down and I can't call my friends and family and I needed to be somewhere and I can't tell them I'm late. And like everyone's like in this panic. And I think that's kind of what we're doing under the ground. All these microbes are going into panic. So they're not thriving. And then you talk about creating these environments where there's this diversity, and then the quorum sensing happens. And there's this kind of like, oh, I'm in my prime, environment now. I'm going to thrive and work at a faster rate. And so that rate of repair is exponential. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah. So moving right on to our fifth principle, we have living roots. So making sure we're maintaining a living root in our soil all year round. Now this is, I guess, that next level of difficulty. So introducing diversity is relatively simple. You implement crop rotation and then maybe a cover crop. These things add additional diversity, but to have a living root in our soil all year round can be pretty difficult, especially when we're in those areas where we get a lot of our rainfall during one time of the year and then nothing in the next. But effectively, we want to have living roots in our soil because what happens when basically plants photosynthesize, they create their own food, but then they pump a lot of that food actually into our soil. And so I think up to like 40% of photosynthate actually get put into our soil. So that can be things like sugars, lipids, and proteins, or produced by our plants, actually go into our soil to feed just our microbes. And so what we want to do is have that living root all year round so that we're feeding our microbes all year round. And so with that, this can be pretty difficult, especially trying to implement this into our different growing systems. Having perennial-based pastures is really good, especially with with livestock. In cropping, it can be a bit more difficult because we're working in these annual systems. I once visited a farm, and he was growing clover and peas. So he did that for 2 years, and then grazed that. So he had a living root for 2 years, and then he grazed the clover right down and the peas right down. Then he sowed his wheat straight into it, right. So I had the living legume root all year, and then he had wheat go into it. And basically that crop yielded 7 tons of wheat a hectare, which is that's phenomenal with no nitrogen input. Like for the record, the average wheat yield, I think for the area, I think it's 5 tons.
Wow, so
and across Australia, it's 2.2.
What?
So, and mind you, this was I think it was like last year or the year. So it was a good growing season for it. But the fact that he didn't apply any nitrogen, so no nitrogen input, it was just these legumes, and having a growing root in the soil the whole year really contributed to his increase in production. Now, it is important to note that he did actually run a trial with a neighbouring paddock, and he put 50 kilos of nitrogen. I think it was urea, so it would have been slightly less nitrogen. But that yielded 8 ton of wheat a hectare. So it does suggest that it was a bit limited in nitrogen. But 7 ton a hectare, no nitrogen is pretty good.
Yeah. That's one less thing on your to-do list.
Yeah. So we can, with this living root idea, if you picture in your mind, energy flows from our plants into our soil, but then minerals flow from our minerals into our plants. And so it's not just that there's free minerals within our soils, but the microbes that the plants are feeding actually can mine these minerals in our soil. So take minerals that are locked in our soil, make them available to our plants, and then give them to our plants through different processes, rhizophagy cycle.
Wow.
Yeah. So
the other thing I want to say to that is, in a positive note, is that at school we get told that the roots suck up water. I think that's it's like the scratch of the surface of what a root does, and I think most people think you just need to put water and the roots go up, but there is this trade economy happening under the ground, and I always visualize it like the stock exchange footages that we see. There's like people are like trying to put in buy orders, and like there's this chaos. And
I'll take some carbon.
Yeah, I'll take some carbon. It's like, oh, what are you going to give me? Here's some carbohydrates for your payment. Go get me some zinc, and all these minerals and all these microbes underground, like what you said, are going and mining, and they're mining like little grains of sand and rocks, and and they're getting that stuff and bringing it back to the plant, and the plant is giving it carbohydrates as its payment. I think it's kind of fascinating to visualize this fact that under our feet is this massive trade economy, and economics that just works probably better than any system we've designed on the planet above the ground.
Yeah, and it's crazy because that's actually how it works. So my understanding is that plants can actually almost tag microbes with their buy order. Wow. So it's like an actual compound. It tells the microbes, I want phosphorus, I want potassium, I want whatever, and it'll go get it and then give it back to them.
Wow. It's funny because that's how the internet works as well. Like from a tech point of view, in the internet, lots of data is getting thrown down the same phone line, but it's tagged that is they call it packets. And you send a packet down the internet phone line and you've got your tag on it. It goes to the server and then it comes back, but only you can collect it because it's got your tag on it, And so this, it's kind of cool. Like when we can see, but I feel like we've created things above the ground that's really a mirror of what's under the ground. We probably just didn't know it.
Yeah, don't even know it.
It's kind of maybe in our DNA or in our, our soul and energy of the planet that we are solving things, thinking we are smart. And even with the power of like fungi and bacteria and so forth, I always remember reading that this I don't want to call it a story because it's not a story, but like this event that happened where the Japanese city used fungi. They did a map of the city and they put like food for the fungi where they wanted all the train stations.
Yeah, all the major cities.
And then they got the fungi to create like a mycelium kind of, I don't know what you call it, where fungi connect one
Well,
point
yeah,
to
they
another.
inoculated it, and then sorry,
No, yeah, because I'm butchering
yeah,
it.
no, yeah, good.
Take it over.
Yeah, so they had the basically the food of all the major cities and the
Yeah.
stations are, and they inoculated the plate, and basically the fungi arranged itself in such a way that it was the most efficient way to transport food between each point.
Yeah.
And so it was the most efficient way it could arrange itself. So
Yeah.
they basically rebuilt the whole city,
Yeah.
and then the train line to mirror this. Well, I'm pretty sure they.
Yeah, I think part of the train line was already created, so they couldn't change that.
Yeah.
But it was for the expansion. But what they realized is that the fungi created faster pathways
and more efficient.
That if they would have thought of using that as a way of planning their train lines decades ago, they would have got a more efficient train system. So, and just again, another example where nature already has the solutions that we need.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that how smart these things are. I mean, you kind of consider them as dumb kind of things
below us. Yeah,
do things, but they can actually almost think for themselves.
Well, if you were to die in a forest, the fungi would consume you, so it wins.
Oh, yeah, I guess
you know what I mean? Like we're not superior because it survives even after us. So
cycling.
Yeah.
On to the next one. No, but the living root, throughout the year, make sure that we get a constant flow of energy into our soil, feeding those microbes, and then a constant flow to our plants. And what I find pretty cool is that this kind of it builds upon itself. So when we keep moving nutrition from our soil into our plants, that nutrition is then easy, a bit more accessible for the next plants to access. So basically, if that plant dies and becomes litter, then that cycle, the next plant will be able to pick up that. So having a living root allows us to almost compound compound in a way the fertility in our soil. Living roots also create macropores, which increase the amount of infiltration into our walls, into our soil. So just tunnels in our soil. The root extracts are a massive part, so making sure that we're feeding our microbes to then produce different functions, like building stable aggregates and mineralization, all that. So really, principle 5, living roots, or maintaining living roots throughout the year. There's a whole bunch of different ways we can do this, and it can get pretty hard. But achieving this ensures that we're really building this living system within our soil. Principle 6 is integrating livestock, or livestock integration. Now, this is probably one of the hardest principles, and that's because in a lot of our systems, we don't really have livestock. So, of course, in livestock production systems, we don't have livestock, but in a lot of cropping systems, they've removed livestock, or they've taken down fences, so it's just one big paddock, and it'll be very difficult to integrate livestock in that. Or in our horticulture, it's difficult to integrate livestock. But to think about how nature did it before, what happened would be, I guess the livestock are a big cycle of nutrients. And so a cow, or whatever ruminant animal you want to think of, would eat the plants, and then they'll cycle that, almost inoculate it with their guts, the microbes within the guts, and they'll drop that out the other side, and then you got almost a fertilizer making. Someone put it to me a while back, like a sheep is a lawnmower at the front, a meat processor in the middle, and a fertilizer at the back. So you get 3 functions out of like one animal. That would cost you, a couple of mil of machinery to do. Yeah. So like livestock, it really increased the amount of microbes in our system and the cycling within our system as well. Again, it's very difficult to integrate this now, and that's why it's at our principle. But the benefits you can get from integrating livestock onto your farm can be massive. One study, I can't recall the exact numbers, but they compared a cover crop terminated by livestock versus not. So I think they sprayed it, or one of those roller crimpers. There was like 4 times the amount of mycorrhizal fungi in the livestock terminated cover crop. I'm not sure why. Maybe that's just like the manure effect. But there's this...
And the urine as well.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's a big component too. I was listening to one Kemp's podcast, and he was interviewing a guy who integrated sheep into wineries.
I was about to talk about the same thing.
Oh, yeah. You listened to
Not that one, but I was going to say vineyards are one of the biggest industries where because it's so hard to get machinery through the rows, they are using sheep to graze, do all the pruning and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So they designed this winery, this vineyard in such a way that the sheep could just walk under the vineyard or the vines, but they reduced their tractor passes by like, I'm not going to say the exact amount of times, but like a lot of times. Yeah. I think they reduced their water, like the irrigation by 90% because the sheep were basically doing it. Completely cut out nitrogen fertilizer because the sheep were doing it. Like they were able to reduce their inputs significantly, and the wine quality went up a lot. They got their wine tested.
Do they use bricks with grape?
Was that? Oh, yeah, I think they do. But they also have a different. They have a different measurement as well.
Yeah, okay.
It has like a floating thing.
Okay.
If you're a winemaker, right in.
Love to chat to you about it.
Actually, yeah, it'd be good, especially if they're on a regenerative farm.
Yeah.
The difference.
Yeah, because I went to WA, South Australia recently, into a vineyard area to do some filming, and those rows are so close together, you know, and going up and down those rows is very time consuming and, you know, very very labor intensive, and a lot of the stuff still happens manually. And yeah, there was some people in that area going down the integrating sheep into those, and yeah, the early days signals, because it was very early days. And I think they had to change the height of they had to change something.
Yeah, to put them up,
the
wires up. So.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, and it's like that's a very small change when you think about the benefit you're going to get for decades to come.
Yeah. So livestock integration.
It's also another revenue income.
That's true. Yeah, so you diversify across different
businesses.
Effectively.
Probably not now where sheeps are $1.
No, yeah, but I mean, like this time last year would have been pretty good.
Yeah, but that's the other thing. You don't have to destock because they're actually a tool or a part of the system, integrated system. You know, like selling that off for, you know, the need for profit is probably not needed because it's like dual income or multiple, you know, stacking enterprises together. So one can kind of offset the other. Yeah, sheep prices are $1, but they're my lawnmower, they're my fertilizer machine. They're keeping, you know, the edges trim, and if we sell them, that's the bonus or the cream. Yeah. Or you might shear them and get the wool, and that's another, you know, kind of thing. But yeah, I think seeing that as like another revenue stream, but a plus system.
Yeah. Very good. And I guess kind of leading on from that and what we're talking about, like farmers' mindset, is our seventh principle, which I don't know if this is the hardest or it should be at the first, but it is mindset.
Definitely the hardest from what I've experienced.
Yeah. Having a regenerative mindset or like a growth mindset, that's a proper term for it, fixed and growth. But kind of like going to what this farmer was doing, you know, they had basically all these problems that they had to overcome. They just said, these are the kind of the problems we need to fix, and so like, you know, increasing the wire, that would have been a headache for everyone. But these guys saw it as, you know, we have this opportunity here to integrate livestock and it's going to contribute all this. What do we need to change in our system to cater for that? And they did it, and it was successful. They got additional yields and production out of it. And so it's this mindset of testing. If it goes bad, why did it go bad? What am I going to learn from it? Is there a way I can make it better and get all those benefits? And being open to different ideas and testing things.
Yeah, because I think it's very, like, moving the wire is hard, but I think it's much harder ripping the vines out and calling it a day. You know, like I see a lot of vineyards in this South Australia area have pivoted into other industries because growing the grapes has just been difficult, or there's a lot of competition. And I think, you know, making that small change, and it might be hard work to lift the wire or change your mindset, but I think it's much harder and more heartbreaking to pull the trees out and say, you know, we didn't do it, we couldn't make it work, you know. But yeah, I think mindset, to your point of, should it be at the start? Yes. Is it the most hardest to do? Yes. So if your order is on his ability to implement it, but I think you got to just start small. You don't ever wake up. You know, I always bring these things back to like things that people understand, like fitness. Like, some people know they should go to the gym. Like, getting to the gym is the hardest thing. You know, so the mindset can be 100%. Like, yeah, I am a fit person who goes to the gym. That's what you can tell yourself, and you can have a really good mindset. But if you don't actually go, Like you're just
Yeah,
kind
well,
of fooling yourself.
that's true.
You
Yeah,
know?
we all know that when like if you need to lose weight, you go to the gym. Like
Yeah.
it's not like a super hard thing to picture, but if that's not super hard, then why isn't everyone doing it?
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's why action trumps thoughts in this kind of stuff, where like if you go out there and you do something and you make a mess of it and you fail and you didn't get it right, you are probably 100 times ahead of someone who's still there planning about how next year they're going to go regenerative.
Yeah.
Or they're going to change one practice, or they're going to do something. You know, if you got to really walk the walk. And from what a lot of the people I've met over the last 6 or so years, it's normally there's a crisis that happens that causes the change. A massive hailstorm 2-3 years in a row meant that we have to do a new farming system. A massive fire comes through the farm, and it's an opportunity to reset. Normally an event like that has to happen, but I think we live in a world now where we can learn through these events and go, like, this is what's happened with this person. I want to learn from them and then with them as well, because the people I'm talking about are like Gabe Brown and Colin Seiss, and these are all people who are very open for you to pick up the phone and call them, or go onto YouTube and watch a 2-hour interview with them. They're very vocal about the fact that they made this change, and it will come from a space of crisis, and they're like saying, don't let the crisis happen to you, like learn from my hardship that you can do it easier. You need that mindset to kind of have the willpower to say, this is what I'm going to commit to today, and just do that. Even do it for a week. And you can't go all in. Like anyone who says you discover this, and it is exciting. Like I can understand. Like I didn't even have access to land half the time that I've learned through all this soil, health movement. But it's exciting to be like, we're only going to be organic, or we're going to do no tilling, and like I said before, we're going to sell the tiller. Like that's probably the worst thing you can do.
Yeah,
it's
kind of
like
options.
Yeah, and it's like the person who decides to quit smoking and goes cold turkey. Within a week, back on the packer. Like it's hard. Why put yourself through that cold turkey pain when there is smaller rehabilitation kind of processes to make baby steps and do one thing? Even if you did one thing every year for the next 10 years, imagine what your farm would look like in decade.
Yeah.
That decade.
Yeah.
I was about to say century. I was like, no, that sounds too big. But yeah, like I love seeing those photos online where someone's like, this is what our farm
before
looked
and
like.
after?
Yeah, like 2020 and 2023, or like maybe not that much, like 2005 to 2023. It's like, you've done all that in 8 years. Like, it's just crazy, like what nature can do and what you can create, especially when people are sharing food forests. Oh my God, for me, like there's just this energy that wants to pull me into these food forests. Because for me, the food forest model or syntropic farming, those kind of models break the convention of straight line and single mono, and you got multiple years of yielding, and the plan is a bit more erratic. And I think for my startup brain, where you move fast and break things, that kind of like my dream has always been to just like throw seeds into a paddock and just whatever grows and be like, yep, the apple tree's there because nature picked for it to be there.
Oh man, that would be a bit of a headache trying to harvest all that. It's nice when things are in line, because it's like, it's easy to do stuff. Like it's easy. So you got a tractor going up and down a line. Like it's easy to go up and down rather than in squiggly lines.
Yeah, well, I'm betting on the drone technology. So
yeah, fair enough.
Precision, what would we call it? Well, there's precision ag, but that'll be precision harvest.
Oh yeah. That'd be cool.
Yeah, you heard it first on the Regenerative Hour.
Yeah. I think a final thing with mindset is not discarding things that people are doing in your area. So like the classic story is your neighbor's doing something. You go, oh no, like I'm not going to do that. It only works with them because they're getting more rain or whatever. Rather than going, oh, actually this could work on my farm too. So being open to new ideas, rather than just discounting everything and saying it's not going to work here. You go, hey, it might work here. Let's trial it. Might fail, might not. But at least we tried.
Agreed, 100%. And you know, yeah, it's I know a lot of people have done that over the distance. It's like, oh, that works in that part of the world. But when you start seeing those cliche fence line pictures where one paddock is green and the other's brown,
Yeah,
you kind of go, well,
there's something here.
yeah, there's something here. Like it can't be the climate or the water rainfall. Like this land is getting the same amount of everything.
Except love.
Except for love. Oh, that's such a good way
Okay.
on ending this episode. Now, I just want to say, if you're watching the video, Till's looking down. He has no notes apart from the 7
Yeah, I got
principles.
dot points. Yeah.
Just dot points. Like everything you've heard there is pure wisdom coming out of his mind and heart. So, you know, there's a wealth of knowledge that you're going to be able to unpack with us during these regenerative hours. So, yeah, just love to get your early day feedback on how you're enjoying these episodes. Feel free to DM me, find us, stalk us, follow us, subscribe,
Don't show up to my house,
share. Well, I have your address, so if you pay me enough, you might. But you know, on that note, like this is like where there should be opportunities of doing like farm tours and you know, meeting the man behind the mic.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But awesome, you've been hanging out with Till Simmons and Regen Ray. Any final thoughts, Till?
If you're interested in this, we are looking at building out actually like a free training / course, all that and more. I don't know. Keep your ears open for it.
Yeah, Till and I spent a couple of weeks apart because I've been busy in Melbourne and all that. And we got back and he's like, oh, I put an outline together of a course. I'm like, so have I. Like talk about synergies and being in sync and being on the same page. That's slightly different, but they had very similar threads and themes. And you know, we thought, okay, well, if we both had the same idea when we were in reflection time, there's something here.
Yeah.
So watch this space. Excellent. Okay, soul lovers, until next time.
Keep your hands dirty. No. What's this? Get outside and get your hands dirty.
Get outside. Get your hands dirty and keep digging deeper into the wonderful world of soil.
Sounds good. Cheers, everyone. Bye.
Well, soil lovers, that's enough secrets for one episode. I really hope that you enjoyed all the secrets shared during this conversation. But hey, let's not keep it a secret. Please share this podcast around and make sure that you like it and leave us a review because that really helps spread the secrets of the soil. Until next time, remember, get outside, get your hands dirty and keep digging deeper into your soils.